You're angry at God right now, screaming for answers, demanding explanations. But here's the truth nobody dares to tell you. God doesn't owe you a single one, and the moment you accept that, everything changes. We live in a culture where we demand an explanation for everything. When something goes wrong, our reaction is immediate. Why did this happen? Why didn't he intervene? Why me? Why now? And when the answers don't come, we wait. We wait for God to justify himself, to reveal the reason behind our suffering, to show us that missing piece that would finally make everything make sense. But what if that expectation is precisely the problem? What if, somewhere along the way, we turned faith into a kind of transaction? We trust God as long as he explains his decisions to us. We believe as long as his choices make sense to us. But when life becomes unbearable, when the prayer remains unanswered, when something we deeply desired is taken away from us, we suddenly demand an explanation. We say, God, if you are good, then explain to me why. And behind this question lies something much deeper, the assumption that God would have the responsibility to make his plans understandable to our minds. But think about it for a moment. Why would the creator of everything be obligated to explain all of his purposes to us when we are incapable of seeing beyond the present moment? This does not mean that your suffering has no meaning. It does not mean that your questions are wrong, and certainly not that God is indifferent to what you are going through. It means something much more uncomfortable. Maybe the real question is not, why didn't God give me an explanation? Maybe the real question is, why did I believe that an explanation was what I needed? There is a verse we will return to later, a verse that gives this entire struggle a completely different perspective. But before we get there, we need to ask an even more important question. What if faith was never meant to begin with understanding? We have been conditioned to believe that understanding is necessary to trust. If we know the reason, we can accept the situation. If we understand the plan, we can move forward. But when God remains silent, when events seem unfair or absurd, our trust begins to waver. And that is precisely where something important is revealed. Because if your faith depends on God explaining everything to you, then maybe it is not really faith that you are exercising. It is a form of control. You agree to trust only when you can verify, understand, and approve. But God never asks you to become capable of seeing what he sees. Think about your own life. How many things that you once considered disasters eventually took on a different meaning with time? How many closed doors led you towards something you never would have chosen yourself? How many painful moments, which you desperately wanted to understand at the time, changed the way you saw life years later? We often judge a story when we know only one page of it, and that may be our greatest mistake with God. We look at an isolated event and demand to understand the entire plan. We see the loss, but we do not see what might come afterward. We see the silence, but we do not see what may be taking shape within that silence. We see only what is happening to us now, and then we use that fragment to judge God's entire intention. But imagine for a moment that your inability to understand is not proof of God's absence. What if it is simply the limit of your perspective? That does not make suffering easy. It does not erase the tears, the questions, or the anger. But it changes the question. Instead of asking, why does God allow this? We may begin to ask, can I trust him even when I don't understand? And that question is going to take us much further. And now, let us return to that verse we left hanging. It is an extremely short verse, but it contains an idea capable of completely transforming the way we look at God, suffering, and the answers we demand from him. Job 38:2. Who is this that obscures my plans with words without knowledge? This sentence comes at a particularly important moment. Job has suffered. He has lost what mattered to him. He has asked questions. He has tried to understand. And throughout all of this, he wanted an answer to a question that is terribly familiar to us. Why? Why did God allow this to happen? And when God finally responds, he does not begin by explaining to Job why all of this happened to him. He does not give him the complete story. He does not reveal the backstage of heaven. He asks him a question. Who is this that obscures my plans with words without knowledge? In other words, How can you judge the entirety of what you cannot even see in its entirety? And that is where the verse becomes personal, because we do exactly the same thing. We look at a few weeks, a few months, sometimes a few years of our existence, and we want to draw a definitive conclusion about God from that fragment. We see what has been lost, but we do not see everything that exists. We see the door that closed, but we do not see what it was preventing. We see the silence, but we do not know what is unfolding behind that silence. And perhaps that is precisely what this passage wants us to understand. The absence of an explanation is not necessarily the absence of meaning. Job wanted an explanation. God gave him something more difficult, a new perspective, because sometimes the answer we expect from God is not an explanation of what happened. It is the ability to trust him without understanding everything. And that is where our anger begins to lose its power. So perhaps the question was never, why did God allow this? Perhaps the deeper question is, can I still trust him when I have no explanation? Because faith is not about having all the answers. Sometimes it means continuing to move forward while the answers are still beyond our reach. You can be angry. You can be lost. You can ask questions. God does not need you to pretend to understand for your faith to be real. But there comes a moment when you have to accept that our vision is limited. We want to know the why. Sometimes God asks us to trust him with the how. And perhaps that is precisely where something changes within us. You stop demanding that God explain every chapter to you, and you begin to trust him with the entire story. God does not owe you an explanation, but that does not mean he has abandoned you. It may simply mean that some things will only be understood after they have been lived. So if today you are in the silence, if you are still waiting for an answer, do not confuse silence with absence. You may not need to understand everything in order to keep believing.